Happy Saturday, everyone. Welcome to this November 1st edition of The Truth. I'm John Gordon. Now, I don't know whether you're probably not, actually, like my wife and I. We started this little tradition about 10 years ago. I think one of us had too much to drink at a cocktail party, and some gal came up to us and was telling us how, it's the first of the month. You did say rabbit this morning, didn't you? And we looked at each other like, what is this woman talking about? She said, yeah, if the first words you utter on the first day of each month are rabbit, you'll have good luck for the next month. So we've adopted this practice, and we even do it in the middle of the night. You know how sometimes you wake up in the middle of the night and you have to make a quick trip to the bathroom? So if one of us goes to the bathroom in the middle of the night and it's the first day of the month, we'll come back into the room and exclaim, rabbit, waking the other up so they can too say rabbit. Well, we pulled it off again this morning, and it's our lucky day because you decided to tune into the truth, and we really appreciate that. If you're in Atlanta with us today, you're going to have a beautiful fall day. 62 degrees will be the high. If you're a listener in Norfolk, you've got a little cooler, 60 degrees, still a beautiful fall day. Then in Pittsburgh, 53. It's getting kind of chilly there. Richmond, you're going to have a 60-degree day today. Nashville, you'll have 58 degrees as a high today. All of these are clear to cloudy skies, but nevertheless, no rain in the forecast in any of the cities thus far, even old Philadelphia there, 57 and mostly sunny today. So a pretty nice day up and down the East Coast. In Memphis, 60 degrees and a small chance of rain, just 45%. So welcome again to The Truth. We've got another lousy show for you today. I would recommend you go walk the dog or go paint the garage like you promised your wife you were going to do about 6 months ago, instead of wasting your time listening to me today. But if you want to stick around, well, you might find it somewhat interesting because we're going to talk about Trump, the world traveler and energizer bunny. Okay. And then Trump meet Xi this past week. Jerome Powell finally did give us another drop in interest rates, and we've got some amazing, phenomenal statistics to throw at you, some data freshly out on Tesla and the full self-driving machine. We also are going to be talking about the economy, the Fed, Powell, and Trump's new economy with Steve Bonta. He is the publisher of The American magazine. And then we've got on one of the most enjoyable interviews, no disrespect intended for any of our other guests, but Richard Lyons. He's the author of The DNA of Democracy and Shadows of the Acropolis. I thoroughly enjoyed our time together and think that you might enjoy the interview. I'm really pleased with the way that it turned out. So we're coming to you today on the John Fredericks Radio Network and on cdm.press and all across the World Wide Web. You can go follow us live right now and interact with us on Facebook, X, TikTok, Instagram, Getter, and Truth Social. You can watch us live, and on Getter, you can interact with us in real time. Did I mention Rumble? And and Getter. So on Getter, you can interact with us. We read your comments and we'll respond if we can squeeze it in, because again, it gets a little hectic here. But we definitely read each one of them, and I appreciate it. President Trump, you may recall, had a dinner fit for a king. Not a political statement, just being real with you. At Windsor Castle in London, just a little over a month ago. It seems like an eternity. Well, since then, I went to Europe about the same time. I came home and complained about jet lag the next week. Not President Trump. He worked. He worked in the Oval Office. He met with the press, and he accomplished so much. He accomplishes so much every single day on behalf of the American people. He did take a quick trip down to West Palm Beach. Did you hear that they shut down Southern Boulevard in West Palm Beach, the road adjacent to the Palm Beach International Airport on the south side, because they found a hunting stand in a tree in the woods with direct line of sight to where Air Force One parks at Palm Beach International. Well, my wife and I went out, that's just about 10 minutes from where I'm sitting, and we scouted the area. I was amazed at what I found. This line of trees, I couldn't identify the exact tree, but you know, I'm a pilot. I'm familiar with PBI, very familiar with PBI. I've flown in and out of there probably, well, over 100 times. I don't remember the number, but over a 20-year period of time, maybe well into the hundreds, actually. And so this tree stand lined up exactly with the taxiway adjacent to runway 32 at PBI. So I just traced that line with my line of sight, with my naked eye, and located the general vicinity of this tree. Guess where that tree is and what's around it? I was astounded. There is Southern Boulevard that I mentioned. Adjacent to it is a small green space. Next to it is a lagoon that goes for miles. You can't cross the lagoon unless you go down to the cross street. I can't remember the cross street, but I traveled it. And if you go on the cross street, there is a patch of grass that goes alongside the lagoon that you can walk up, and you can cross a grassy kind of area of weeds, and you're in the stand of trees. The tree is right there. So I said, I wonder how someone would have accessed this area to have gotten to that tree. So we drove around. We continued along the road to the to the east, and then we came upon Congress, which is a major artery in West Palm Beach. It goes all the way from, I think, Dixie Highway, all the way west out past Wellington. And it also is the address for the sheriff's office. The main headquarters for the sheriff's office sits right there, and I'm going to estimate that it's on 5, 7, 8 acres of land. It's massive, a huge building, and garages where they store God knows what. And I drove around the parking lot. Hey, I pay my Palm Beach County taxes. There were no trespassing signs. But then I got to a gate, and you couldn't really see beyond it, but you could see the stand of trees I'm referencing directly behind the sheriff's headquarters. So then I was interested, well, could you access this tree stand from Congress Boulevard? So we drove out of the sheriff's office and went to the driveway adjacent to it. Guess what that driveway was? The entrance into the Florida National Guard West Palm Beach Division. I drove in the driveway, no trespassing signs. God, I hope they don't come and arrest me because I've confessed to trespassing on the air. But the gate was wide open. It was like, come on in. So we did. We drove in, we drove around. And just like the sheriff's office, we came to a chain link fence, padlocked, and it went all the way north to, or east to west, and in the eastern corner, that chain link fence appears to join the chain link fence for the sheriff's department. And I wanted to get out and look and see if you could walk past this tall group of bushes and whether maybe there was a breach in the fence that would allow you to walk through. But even I'm not stupid enough to try that, because then I really would have no defense to trespassing. So I didn't. But my point is, folks, that you got the National Guard and you got the sheriff's headquarters right behind the tree where they found the hunting stand. Now, I got to tell you, folks, that's in the city limits. There is no firearm discharge permitted inside the city limits. So it's not a place that someone would go to hunt. As a buddy of mine told me on the phone yesterday, he said the only thing you could hunt out there are those big lizards, iguanas. Oh God, we've got iguanas in West Palm Beach. They are everywhere. But that's all you can hunt. There are no deer there. There are no turkey there. There are no dove, quail. There might be some rabbit, but you're not going to shoot them in the middle of the city behind the sheriff's headquarters and across the street or across the lagoon from Southern Boulevard, which has a pretty much nonstop presence of law enforcement going up and down that busy artery all hours of the day and night. It isn't for hunting. So what is it? Maybe it was for bird watching. I don't know. But they shut down Southern Boulevard for an entire day, the day before President Trump arrived to spend the weekend at Mar-a-Lago. Was it a week ago or 2 weeks ago now? 2 weeks ago, I believe, that he was in town. And I still don't have a good explanation for why they shut down Southern Boulevard. But obviously they were alarmed enough, I think, by this deer stand, hunting stand, that they shut down one of the main arteries in West Palm Beach for like 8 hours, including both ends of rush hour. I don't know why. Maybe they were trying to secure a perimeter and determine whether there could be an active shooter somewhere within proximity of the airport. Well, they dismantled that deer stand, the FBI did, and sent it to headquarters for analysis. You haven't heard anything about it since then. But the inference is that it was put there as a sniper's nest with direct line of sight to where they parked Air Force One. So would that indeed be yet another foiled assassination attempt on Trump? We've had Butler, we've had West Palm Beach, and now we have this deer stand. So that's 3 that we've had just since June of 2024. I'm worried about our president. I pray about his safety, and I want you to too. Now, here's what really amazed me. When I pulled out of the sheriff's office, what do you guess was on the other side of the road? Trump International Golf Course. And that's where my producer and I went the day that Ryan Routh tried to allegedly, well, not allegedly because he's now been convicted, to shoot the now 47th president of the United States. It's very concerning. Anyway, so he got back from Mar-a-Lago. What did he do? He got on Air Force One and went to meet with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in order to finalize the Gaza hostages release in exchange for a ceasefire, and also met with the hostage families and addressed the Knesset. That's the Israeli parliament. Then he went to Egypt, where he attended the Middle East peace ceremony and to finalize the release of the remaining hostages in Gaza. It's signed. It's tenuous. It didn't hold up for long before we saw people from Hamas assembling a firing line of Palestinians who they then shot in the back because they suspected that they were disloyal to Hamas. And they've killed other people. And Israel retaliated. But now we hear the peace treaty is still in place. These are mere speed bumps on the way to getting a lasting peace. So I don't know. Tell me in the comment section if you're on YouTube or if you're on Getter what you think. I'd really like to know whether you think that this peace accord is going to hold up. So on October the 13th, Trump returns to the United States, to the White House. He works for another 10 days. And what does he do next? He jumps on that big, beautiful bird of his, Air Force One, and flew on his way to Kuala Lumpur, to Malaysia. But he stopped unexpectedly in Qatar. Now, what do you think he was doing? They said, oh, it was just a refueling stop. But while he was refueling that big, beautiful bird, he met with the emir. What you reckon they were talking about? The prime minister was also present. It was just a fueling stop. Nobody's talked about it. But if you'll stay tuned and listen to my interview with Richard Lyons, he has his theory on why Trump stayed there. And that is worth sticking around for. Then he jumps back on Air Force One and goes to Malaysia, lands at Kuala Lumpur, where he meets with the prime minister and the Cambodian prime minister, and they sign a peace accord. This president, our president, is globe-trotting the world in search of peace and progress because he has also been signing trade deals. He went on to Japan and met with their new prime minister, Sanae Takachi. How'd I do, Anthony? I think I nailed it. Prime Minister Sanae Takachi. And he visited the U.S. troops there. He made remarks on board the USS George Washington at the Yokosuka Naval Air Base. And he signed a trade deal with Japan. And he got agreement from Japanese automakers to invest $15 billion in new plants in the United States. Then he was off to South Korea, where he met President Lee Jae-myung at the National Museum, and he had dinner at the Art Center, and for the grand finale, met Chinese leader Xi Jinping. Here's what President Trump said about his historic meeting with Chairman Xi.
But overall, I guess on the scale of from 0 to 10, with 10 being the best, I would say the meeting was a 12. Okay, I think it was a 12. I think very importantly, just the whole relationship is very, very important. And I think it was really good.
Especially coming on the heels of the successful trip. We're in Malaysia. You signed a peace deal for Cambodia and Thailand. Critical mineral deals with all our allies.
So many successful meetings. Right? And so many meetings great for our country with literally hundreds of billions, trillions of dollars have come into our country over the last 4 days, represented by this meeting. But trillions of dollars, where Toyota is going to build plants, $10 billion worth of plants. And, I could go over so many different companies coming in. They're pouring money into the United States. So beyond even this meeting, this was an unbelievable trip. And I hope you're glad you were a part of it. It was big.
Hey, I wonder if they serve alcohol on board Air Force One. If you're on our live stream and you can see the video, and you can do that on YouTube, Rumble, Facebook, X, and Getter, you can see, I think that cameraman may have been nipping a little bit because he couldn't hold the camera steady. Trump was bouncing all over the place. Or maybe Trump had the jitters or something. Maybe he was not stable on his feet. I don't know what was going on. But Trump did comment on it. Here's what he said.
We're trying to rebuild shipbuilding. The Cranes just agreed to invest $150 billion in shipbuilding, so we think we have a good path forward.
But that's no longer an issue.
Did the war in Ukraine or Taiwan come up?
We discussed that, and we discussed basically, these are rough winds in Asia. I must tell you, this is a rough flight. We could have waited an hour, maybe. This is a little tough. These are tough conditions for interviews. You know, they're going to be watching Trump. They're going to say, he didn't look too good. He's got the shakes. I don't have the shakes, but people are going to think I do.
You're pretty solid.
So Trump has such a fun sense of humor. He said, well, the media will say I was unsteady on my feet. He didn't think about the fact that the cameraman was nipping. No, none of that was true. They were just going through some really bad turbulence. Sort of a metaphor on what Trump's life is like every day as president of this great country. He walks through turbulence every day of his life. But he reported that he and Chairman Xi did not sign the trade deal, but they've got a more than first draft of it, and that he thinks that it will be signed. Xi made some concessions on rare earth minerals. He also pledged to work tirelessly on stopping the flow of fentanyl into the United States. And as President Trump said, it is a very complicated, difficult issue because there are legitimate and necessary uses of fentanyl in medicine. And so you've got to somehow walk the line between the legitimate and the illegitimate. And Chairman Xi has agreed to do just that. In exchange for that, Trump dropped the 20% fentanyl tariff that he put on China and reduced it to 10%. I suspect when we see more and greater evidence that China is in fact working to stem the influx of fentanyl into our country, that you'll see that tariff bill evaporate. Well, Jerome Powell, he and the Fed, it's not just Jerome Powell, okay? I think there are 12 governors of the Fed. They all get a vote. Powell's vote is no greater than the other governors, but they did give us another quarter of a point when they met on Wednesday of this week. Then on Thursday, the market very unpredictably had a not so good day. The Dow crept up, but the NASDAQ and the S&P 500 fell. And, one of my favorite stocks, Tesla, tanked. What the heck? So why did it tank? My suspicion is it was from profit taking. Well, if you are a frequent listener to the truth, and I don't give investment advice, I got to say that because the lawyers will be all over me if somebody spends 50 cents and they lose their money, and then they're going to say they're going to blame me. So it's not investment advice, okay? We didn't give investment advice, but had you listened to the truth back in July and you had invested some money, you could have bought the stock for $310 a share. It is now trading at $440. That's a 33% increase that you would have received. So why has the stock taken this meteoric shot to the moon? Well, it comes down to two things, really. Full self-driving. Tesla just published its safety results comparing full self-driving to that of a human being, and they tracked it all the way back to 2023. And what we see is that Tesla vehicles using autopilot technology are an order of magnitude safer than the United States average in terms of millions of miles driven before an accident occurs. All right, so in this report that Tesla issued, the national rate of accidents per million miles driven really hasn't changed. Not in the last 2 years. It's somewhere around, it looks to me like 745,000 miles driven and then an accident. So an accident every 745,000 miles. That's what I'm trying to get out. Now, if you just have a Tesla, you're safer. Forget full self-driving. Just with the Tesla, the number of accidents per million miles driven jumps way up. It's closer to the national average, but it still looks like it's about 10 or 15% safer from 23 all the way to the current quarter of 2025. Even though with a Tesla, no self-driving, it looks like it's about, we're just going to say 1 million miles before an accident. So it's safer. But now get this. With full self-driving, you can drive 6.5 million miles without an accident. That is exponentially safer. With full self-driving, in all of 2025, you can drive over and really close to 7 million miles without an accident with full self-driving. So that's why the stock is catapulting to the moon. And the other influence is artificial intelligence. Well, that's what full self-driving is. It's just artificial intelligence. But what else? How else are they applying that? Well, they're developing a robot. If you listen to the truth regularly, you know that because we've reported on it a lot. And the robot is getting really close to being able to go into beta testing, possibly before the end of this year. Now, the end of this year sounds like a long time, but I got news for you, folks. There are only 55 more shopping days left before Christmas. And then New Year's is right around the corner. So this year is in the next 2 months. These Optimus robots could be coming to a household near you. And I can just tell you, I've already put my name in for one. I want me a little buddy. I haven't decided what I'm going to name him yet. I got a little buddy right now. I call him Flagler. He's my all-black, mostly English Labrador Retriever. And he really is my buddy. He goes everywhere that I can take him. And, I love that dog. But he's going to get a new buddy too, because the Optimus robot, they will take your dog for a walk. And they'll do the thing that I like doing least, which is picking up the yard after him. I can't find anybody else who'll do it. But if I get an Optimus robot, I'm going to give them a job description, and that's going to be like number 1. So it is really exciting. It has catapulted the stock, and I truly believe this is just me, okay? Go on YouTube if you like to do this and look for Tesla. There are so many knowledgeable people out there. But this now, you can get any kind of a prediction that you want. There's a Morgan Stanley. I think it's Morgan Stanley. It may be JP Morgan. One of them predict that Tesla is going to be $150 stock by the end of the year. Most consensus estimates are closer to 500. And like I said, we're around 430 right now. So that's some significant runway left just by the end of this year. Kathy Wood, who is a certified financial analyst, and she has a fund that you can buy that on the New York Stock Exchange that has what she calls disruptive stocks that are part of the portfolio. She's killed everybody. She predicts that Tesla will 10x over the next 10 years. Do your own research. I've got a friend right here on The Truth that listens to us regularly. He used to work for GM. He and I have had a very respectful, friendly banter back and forth. He doesn't believe in electric cars. He doesn't believe in FSD. I told him, look, buddy, you're clinging to the horse and buggy. These electrified cars are going to take over the automobile industry in the world. And Tesla is the leader. And do you know that the Model Y, 3, X, and S are unquestionably, you can't argue this, they are the safest cars on the road by an order of magnitude. And you couple that with FSD, they are approaching a level of safety that is only rivaled by the airplane industry. I'm just saying, it boggles my mind, and I am just so happy and thrilled and excited to be alive in 2025. I think I'm going to make it to 2026. But the road ahead of us is full of so much promise and excitement that I'm just thrilled that God allows me to be on this earth and partake. And I don't think we've seen anything yet. You know, I've got a secret to share with you. I will be back in my office or in the bedroom, and I'm talking to this person on speaker in my cell phone, and it's a young lady. And she is incredibly brilliant and sounds really sexy on the phone. And my wife walks back in there, and she says, will you please quit talking to her? I'm like, sweetie, it's really not a her, okay? It's a lady's voice, but I'm actually talking to Grok, and it's a computer somewhere, or ChatGPT. I'm telling you, I don't know how much time I spend talking to Grok and ChatGPT on a daily basis. The only reason I go to ChatGPT is if Grok is bogged down, and that is becoming a frequent occurrence because I don't think that their technology is caught up with the demand just yet. But you can ask ChatGPT or Grok to compare. Let's say you want to go buy a new car today. Ask them what the best SUV is. Ask them what the best SUV is that's gas powered, or ask them what the best electric powered SUV is. Or you can do life skills with ChatGPT. Tell him you're having a fight with your spouse and he's not paying you the attention he needs. It's been 10 years since he brought you a dozen roses. And ask Grok or ChatGPT what to do about it. They will come up with 3 different strategies for you to employ. I mean, I don't know that because I haven't asked them that question. I'm just using a silly example, but it blows my mind. And they're not always right either. You do have to fact check them. They're 90% there, but like I asked them about an airplane the other day, and they told me that the airplane I was asking them about was a turboprop, and I just knew that it was a full jet. So I argued with them about it, and through 3 exchanges, we reconciled it, and they acknowledged that they had made a mistake, that they were looking at an antiquated model that did used to be a turboprop, but the new MU2 that I was asking about is a full jet. So anyway, that's not important except just to illustrate that it's not foolproof. It's not 100%. It's not bulletproof, but it's pretty darn good. And if you want to really fact check it, just go to the other. If you're on Grok, go to ChatGPT. If you're on ChatGPT, go to Grok and just say, hey, is this true? Bingo. Now you got confirmation that it's right. And if you don't, if it's really important, then take it one more step and search the World Wide Web yourself and validate it. But it's really good, folks. It's really good, and it's coming. There's a light at the end of the tunnel, and it is not a freight train. It is sunshine, unless these instruments fall into the hands of the wrong people And that is a legitimate, real major league concern, but the best minds are working on it. And as far as I'm concerned, I am ecstatic for Elon Musk to have a seat at that table. The founder of ChatGPT, not so much. So there are legitimate, serious, ethical and moral issues at play, and we will have to kind of wait. I'm wading into the shallow end, but I'm really getting pretty much up to my shoulders by now, because I do have a FSD car that you've heard me talk about. I love it. It is near perfection. And I do spend an inordinate amount of time talking to that voice on Grok that makes my wife jealous. And really pissed her off the other day when Grok said they'd meet me for a drink. It was just frivolity, because I have to say again, it's just a computer voice. But you can joke with it, and it will joke back with you. And it's educational, and it's informative, and it's just plain fun. So I would encourage you to check it out if you haven't already. We are brought to you today by Perfect Circle Renewable Energy, PCRenergy.com. You can find them on the World Wide Web. If you are a restaurant owner and you're listening to our Atlanta station today, check out PCRenergy.com. They service your market, all of North Georgia. They've been around now over 15 years, going on 20. If you're tired of spotty, unreliable, dirty service, check out PCRenergy.com, because they give you clean, reliable, consistent service. They service your grease traps, pick up your waste oil. They can sanitize the front of the house and the back of the house. They have waste oil containers that are free if you sign up with them, and you can buy containment, which really pleases the health inspector when he comes by and sees that you're not dropping any oil on the ground or on surfaces, and it's all contained in your personal containment system. Our listeners who are in the restaurant business should really check out Perfect Circle Renewable Energy. They are a great company. They give you good, clean service and about 18-hour a day customer service line that you can call them up. If you call at 2 in the morning, you're going to get voicemail, but just leave them a message. They'll call you back by 6:30 or 7 the next day. We also come to you on John Frederick's Media Network, all up and down the East Coast, from Nashville and Atlanta all the way up to Morgantown, West Virginia, with points in between Norfolk, Richmond, Philadelphia, Lynchburg, Pittsburgh. It's just a great media network. We're also pleased to be affiliated with CDM.press. They have newspapers in Miami, Atlanta, and Colorado. They have 13 digital platforms that they're on, as well as they're on all the social media, just like we are, and you can watch our live stream because they take our feed and put it back out on their social media. And ladies and gentlemen, can I just take this opportunity to tell you, we are growing. Anthony and I spend so much time putting this little broadcast together every week, and I would tune in and I'd look, and by Saturday at 6, we might have 20 or 30 views on YouTube, 5 or 10 on Rumble. And it took a while. It was pretty discouraging. Now, we know we've got a large, faithful radio audience, but you guys won't pick up your laptop or your cell phone and go look on YouTube or Getter or Rumble or X or Facebook and just hit the subscribe button. But if everybody listening today would do that, you would catapult us into the range of legitimate on the World Wide Web. So take 75, 100,000 people on the radio, and we've got about 30,000 on social media and on our live stream. If we could bump that up to get to 100,000, man, we would be on the way to Tucker stardom. And it's not about being a star. Don't misunderstand me. I don't want the attention. I'm 72. The girls ain't looking at me anymore. But you give us a better megaphone, a bigger megaphone, and I feel like I've got something to say. I feel like I've got something important that our listeners seem to be interested in learning and knowing. And we work really hard to make sure that what we do every Saturday is to tell you the truth and also expose you to the truth. So if you want to do me a teensy little favor, just go to one of those sites. YouTube would be fine. And look for John Gordon Truth and hit the subscribe button. It doesn't cost you a penny. And it's going to take you less than a minute if you'll do it right now. But we are growing. When we drop our broadcast on social media on Saturdays, now we've got up to 1,000 views. We got 6,000 of you listening on Rumble. On Getter right now, and we had a 10,000 person audience a couple of weeks ago, and our podcasts are getting viewed on social media, and we're getting into the thousands. So we really appreciate that. We are growing. We want to make a difference, and I am so excited. And I'm going to stop with this, but on November the 19th, I'm going to Dallas, Texas. And I will be there on the 20th to attend the JFK Historical Committee symposium that lasts 3 days. It will be visited by scholars, forensic physicians, authors, opinion leaders, and scholars who have studied the JFK assassination for 62 years. I would not say I'm a scholar, but I have certainly studied it for 62 years. And I am so excited to go out there and meet these people whose books I've read and papers they've authored. And, I've been to Dealey Plaza now 3 times. I've actually covered every bit of President Kennedy's route on that fateful day in 1963. Starting at the Love Field and making my way down to Houston Street and making the turn on Elm, going under the triple overpass on the way to Parkland Hospital. Then I came back and went to Lee Harvey Oswald's boarding house where he lived, and then made my way to the intersection where J.D. Tippit was shot. I don't think Oswald was the shooter. And then I walked down the street, as we were told Oswald did, to the theater, past the shoe store, and retraced all of the steps. It's like pulling off a scab. It's like uncovering a wound. It makes you very, very sad. So many people lost their lives that day. John F. Kennedy, Lee Harvey Oswald, the guy who was in the switch station at the railway yard. He died the night before he was supposed to testify before the House Assassinations Committee in a hotel in Washington, D.C. Over 100 people have died mysteriously and through curious accidental deaths, suicide, or a lot of automobile accidents, like the lady on Truth or Consequences who was a journalist in New York. She's the only journalist to have visited, what was his name? Killed Oswald. Jack Ruby, thank you. The only person to have visited Jack Ruby in prison. She came home, called her friend that night and said, I'm going to blow the lid off the Kennedy assassination tomorrow. She woke up dead the next morning in her New York apartment, died of an overdose. Her friends, her hairdresser, her people that knew her best, her secretary, all said she didn't have a drug problem. So we're going to go there. We're going to talk to these people. We're going to broadcast live from Dallas on November 22nd. We'll be in Dealey Plaza at the ceremony, remembering our fallen president. And folks, why do I keep harping on this? It's not because I've got a one-track mind. It's not because I'm like some sort of mentally ill person who just keeps saying the same things over and over and over and over again. But I know I have. But why? Why do I continue to do it? Because I want to bring you along, and I want to help educate you and open your eyes to what I now believe is incontrovertible evidence that the 36th President of the United States orchestrated and led the assassination of the 35th president. That would be Lyndon Baines Johnson. He orchestrated it. He co-opted Allen Dulles, who sat in the CIA headquarters in Virginia, not in the headquarters, but in their situation room, their undercover ops room where the brass can monitor what is happening. He was in, and he was no longer a CIA official because Kennedy had fired him 6 months earlier. And Kennedy said, I'm going to bust the CIA to 1 million pieces and spread its parts to the wind. But Allen Dulles carried it out, and J. Edgar Hoover covered it up. And I was just speaking with a gentleman who is going to be on the show next week, Monty Bennett. He's the CEO of Ashford, Inc. He's a philanthropist. He chairs a company that has a hotel franchise in Dallas. He is very acquainted with the CIA assassination, and he and I are 100% in agreement on what happened. He's read the same books I have. The Devil's Chessboard, David Talbot, The Men Who Killed Kennedy, The Case Against LBJ by Roger Stone, and The Unspeakable, which may be the definitive work, by Douglas. Go get those books. Then give me a comment and tell me you don't believe what I'm telling you. But until you do that, if you're a skeptic, you can comment, but you really need to open your eyes and educate yourself. Why is it important? Because if they could do that to the President of the United States, what else are they capable of, and what else are they willing to stoop to? What am I thinking about? Epstein, Building 7. Do you know about Building 7? We're told that it fell because the foundation was compromised when the Twin Towers collapsed a half a mile away. There's not one architect or engineer in America today who agrees or buys that BS. It was a controlled demolition. I've got more to say about that in the weeks to come. And the attempted assassination on President Trump. You think Thomas Matthew Crooks pulled the trigger? I don't. You think he acted alone if he was the shooter? I don't. You think it was some fringe group that did it? I don't. I think it was our own government. I think it was in people in the intelligence community. I think it was the deep state, because they tried to annihilate Trump in every other way possible. They tried to impeach him twice. They failed. They brought 90 indictments or charges. They failed. They tried to take his money. I mean, Letitia James got a judgment for $500 million against President Trump's company and sought to disqualify it from doing business in the city and state of New York. This is the demonic nature of these people. Then Charlie Kirk, we saw him killed in real time if you care to look. I intentionally did not look. And then I went in search of on X of a witness who I heard had posted. And I went in search of trying to find it. And I was horrified because I had seen it before I knew what I was watching. It just happened so fast. It causes a lump to come up in my throat, and it causes rage to come up in my heart. They've committed murder. They've taken the life of a father and a husband, a patriot, a disciple of Christ. It's got to stop. So do you understand why I keep talking about Kennedy? Because we're going to get to the point where every living American, if they're truthful, will acknowledge that our own government killed him. If they would kill and assassinate, up until that time, one of the most popularly elected presidents ever, if they would kill our own president, what else would they do? Tucker Carlson says they took Nixon out. I believe it. This federal government is rotten to its core. There is a cancer in the federal government that has rotted the government to its core, and it has to be eradicated, surgically removed through legal processes. And Mr. Bennett and I talked at some length before we had our interview about what we could do as lone citizens to help stop the madness and reform our own government and get rid of these demonic, crazed, evil people. You know, the CIA is in the process of conducting a coup in Venezuela, but they are doing it with the full knowledge and support of the President of the United States. I'm sure it is dangerous for the people that are involved. That is legitimate. That is with the authority of the commander-in-chief of our nation. That is in our nation's best interest. Tell me why it is in anybody's interest to kill John Fitzgerald Kennedy in public, sitting next to his wife. Rip LBJ's name off the freeway in Dallas. Take J. Edgar Hoover's name off the FBI building. Try them and hold them accountable in memoriam, and then go find the people that are in our government today who are so low and so demonic and so crazed and so vile and so evil that they would take a shot at President Trump and kill Charlie Kirk. Do I sound angry? You're damn right I'm angry. And I want to stop. And in order for it to stop, it is going to require an uprising from the great silent majority. And that's you. That's everybody listening to this broadcast today and everybody who follows us on social media and listens to our live stream or takes our podcast. You can find our podcast all over the web. Spotify, iHeart's podcast, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music. And for the record, ladies and gentlemen, I've never been happier. I have never been happier. I got a wife of 42 years. I got 3 grown adult sons that I'm so proud of and love so much. I've got 2 grandchildren, and I've been able to work my ass off since I was 12 and risk and save, invest. Life is good. And I played an hour and a half of tennis last night, and for the first time beat my opponents who I have a regular Wednesday night game with. One of them is my age, the other is 30, and we kicked their ass. 6'2", 6'4". Why am I telling you this? Because I'm happy. I don't have any health issues that I know of. I don't have any stress or problems in my marriage. I got 3 children I love and 2 grandchildren who I pray for and want to be able to enjoy the freedoms of the greatest country on earth since the beginning of man. But these people working inside of our own government who do these dastardly deeds with impunity, they get away with it, has got to stop, or we will ruin the future of our country. What has changed since 1963 to 2025? They haven't. The names have changed, but the faces are the same. What's changed? It ain't the mainstream media who are on the take. They are mouthpieces for the people that are doing this. And why are they willing to do it? Because they're making gazillions of dollars, and it's your money that they're using to pay them. We learned that when Mike Taibbi uncovered that the FBI paid Twitter $3.4 million to censor people who challenged the country narrative, Fauci's narrative, and whoever else was behind it on COVID and the vaccine. $3.4 million of taxpayer money to censor people who wouldn't go along with the company narrative. Politico, $10 million in subscriptions bought by our federal government. Cox Enterprises, the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, the Dayton newspaper, a whole 350 radio stations across America, and television stations in Atlanta and Austin and God only knows where else that have government contracts with the Defense Department. You help tell me why an automobile media company have Defense Department contracts. I hope Pete Hegseth has stopped them. But they're the enablers. They're the mouthpieces. And they're the reasons that people don't believe what people like I am saying. And we have been trained over a systemic period of time, long, consistent period of time, to believe what the mainstream media have told us, and they have proven to be corrupt and liars. You heard it. The New York Times, every time you pick it up, they lie to you. They will tell you to this day that Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone. It's time to stop supporting them. Cancel your subscriptions. Don't pick it up. Don't read it. Fight back. Read the Epoch Times. They're truth tellers. If you're in Dallas, you can read the Dallas Express, which is published by Monty Bennett. Now, I'm not mad like in a crazed way, okay? I'm good. But I am mad because it's my tax dollars and your tax dollars that are funding this evil in our country. And I get texts from people every week and emails from people every week telling me that they believe what I'm saying. And they are as disturbed by it as I am. And so should you. You've got to get disturbed. And how can you vent? Write your congressmen and senators. Write your local officials. Because what we've got, folks, is trickle-down ethics. If a little bureaucrat in pick your city sees that our own government can kill the president of the United States and get away with it with impunity, what's to stop them from torturing and tormenting you and being punitive towards you if they don't like you, if they don't like the way you part your hair, or if you have dared ever challenge their decrees that you don't like or that you disagree with, like in school boards where they've started arresting people. Don't you see? It's trickle-down ethics because Christopher Wray told them that they could. And Merrick Garland issued an order that the FBI should go investigate Catholics. It's just so wrong. And it's so un-American. And we're going to lose this great country if you stay in denial or decide your golf game and your, I don't know what ladies do. They play bridge and go shopping. I'm not being mean. Just trying to inject a little humor at a serious point. We're having a crucial conversation here. That's what it is. But if you don't get out of your denial and off your sofa, your grandchildren are toast. They're not going to have a country. They'll wake up one morning and the CCP flag will be flying over our nation's capital. And I'm excited about the trade deal, and I'm excited about the positive meeting that Trump had with Xi. I don't trust them as far as I can throw the house I'm sitting in. They're just like Putin. They'll smile in your face and stab you in the back. Steal from you if they can. Don't fall for it. We can't live in this globe. We are so interdependent on one another. We can't decouple. We just can't separate. We're too interdependent on one another. So what Trump is trying to do, and very smartly, is find ways that we can coexist and that we can complement one another rather than fight. It's going to take a lot of self-discipline on the part of all the world leaders to get us there. But we can. I think President Trump is truly trying to achieve peace, and he's doing it through building relationships with all of these world leaders that he has spent the last 2 months trotting the globe to visit and build alliances with. And it's resulted in now investment approaching $20 trillion. The number's just gone up to 17. I bet you it's 20 by the time we're done. Everybody's come to the table but Canada. And I don't like the fact that Trump has increased the tariffs because they're running an ad that a lot of people, including the Reagan Museum, says that it doesn't represent what President Reagan really believed. But they're running that ad. We showed it to you last week where Reagan said tariffs are bad and they're not sustainable and they work only for a short period of time. Well, I think President Reagan did not consider the fact that in 2025, the trade policies are very unfair towards the United States, and that's what Trump is trying to straighten out. But he's also using our economic power to bring about change. That's celebrated. He's right. Let's go. Let's do it. This is The Truth. I'm John Gordon. I really appreciate you joining us today. Don't worry, I'm good. I just get a little wound up. It's called righteous indignation, for which I make no apology. Let's work together to save this great, beautiful country. Now let's get to our first interview. I think you're going to like it. There's a lot of chatter about the United States economy, the Federal Reserve Bank, our deficit spending. Steve Bonta is with the John Birch Society, and he is the publisher of the New American Magazine. Talking, and he considers himself, and is justified so, in being an expert on our economy, the Fed, and monetary policy. Steve, welcome to The Truth.
Hey, great to be here.
Yes, sir. So you start out with the premise that our currency used to be simply gold and silver. It worked pretty good, didn't it? Well, what's the issue here?
Well, I mean, up until the 1930s, and maybe more technically until 1971, we had a gold standard, and before that, what was called a bimetallic standard, which was actually included in the Constitution, which makes explicit that no state shall make anything but gold or silver legal tender, and all that type of thing. So that was the system that we began with, and in the early 20th century, starting in Europe, countries began to leave the gold standard, much less the silver standard, and switched over to what's called fiat money, which is essentially money that's simply created by bankers and legislative fiat, printed money, as we like to say. Although nowadays, of course, a lot of it's the majority of it's not physically printed, but just created by computer entry. But that's fiat money. It's money that's not backed by any asset, gold or silver. The United States followed originally, the countries in Europe, which had been completely bankrupted by World War I, were the first to go off the gold standard. They didn't really have a silver standard in the sense that we did. And the United States followed suit under Roosevelt, FDR, that Roosevelt, in the 1930s, at the beginning of the Depression. One of the first things Roosevelt did when he became president was to end the gold standard for all but foreign holders of American dollar-denominated assets, primarily treasury debt, that type of thing, treasury bonds, treasury bills, and so forth and so on. And for American citizens, it was made illegal for them to own any kind of gold coinage, and gold was forcibly confiscated. Silver remained in circulation until the mid-1960s. I believe 1965 was the last year that silver coins were minted. And then pursuant the Bretton Woods Agreement, which took place in 1944 near the end of World War II, it was agreed by the nations of the world, absent a couple that were on the other side of the conflict, but all the other nations agreed, in effect, to make the U.S. dollar the international standard, the reserve currency of the world, as we like to say, so that all major transactions, trade, buying and selling of petroleum and other commodities and everything else was always denominated in dollars. And the United States would maintain its tether to gold for any foreigners who wish to redeem dollars. Okay, so that was called the gold window. And when Nixon became president, he found that the U.S. Finances were in shambles because of the Vietnam War in particular was just drawing down reserves. And so in 1971, he said, in effect, that whole promise we made to have gold convertible, dollars convertible to gold, no, we're reneging on that. And so that's euphemistically called closing the gold window, but it's actually a form of default. So when people say, well, the United States has never defaulted on our debts, we're not like Argentina or Zimbabwe. Actually, we have, because we said, in effect, we're no longer going to pay you in gold as we promised to do from now on. You just got to accept dollars.
And even beyond that, we have, I don't know, intentionally or unintentionally created mass inflation, not just recently, but also in the 70s. And so we paid back our creditors with deflated dollars. I mean, we borrowed $1 and we repay it with 90 cents or less because of the devalued and loss of purchasing uh, value of the dollar.
Well, yes, and I mean the entire world is all world currencies now, even the Swiss franc are all, that was the last one to go off the gold standard, but they're all fiat. And so, in effect, the strength of the dollar today, the reason that people still regard the dollar as the bedrock currency, the reserve currency, the one that people are willing and that foreigners are still willing to buy U.S. government debt, is that the U.S. dollar is less inflationary than the other currencies. In effect, that it's the least objectionable of all of them. But in effect, the entire world has been persuaded to go onto the system of fiat currency. And in some cases, it's been absolutely disastrous. Obviously, Argentina, Zimbabwe, Russia, Turkey, many other countries have suffered from what's called hyperinflation. But fiat currency, fiat money is inherently inflationary. So when people talk about how, inflation is heating up, what they neglect to say is that there's always inflation going on when money is being printed. And the reason is that fiat money is effectively politicized money. So for all that you hear about how the Federal Reserve is supposedly above the fray and is non-political and all this type of thing, that's manifestly not the case. The Federal Reserve, like all central banks, is beholden to politicians. It has to work with treasury officials in the government and so forth. And so it is obviously when it adjusts its rates, it never does so in a way that is that damages the people who matter. And what I mean by that is that the Federal Reserve, like all central banks, they don't just print money and throw it out of helicopters. They actually have a very sophisticated mechanism for introducing, well, several actually, for introducing new money into the money supply. And one of the most important of these is what's called open market operations. Okay, and open market operations were invented by a man named Benjamin Strong, who was the head of the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, and was probably involved in the secret Jekyll Island meeting in the early 20th century, where the Federal Reserve was first planned out with a bunch of elite European bankers.
Weren't U.S. businessmen involved in that too, like the Vanderbilts and the Rockefellers? And
Oh yeah, there were, yeah, certainly there were, yeah. So I mean, there were several U.S. businessmen and one U.S. congressman, Senator Nelson Aldrich, were all involved in this sort of cabal that met at Jekyll Island and in secret.
yes,
And planned the creation of the Federal Reserve. That's another story for another day. But suffice it to say, this Benjamin Strong was one of the central figures, and he was a brilliant financier. And one of the problems he has, well, okay, so now we have this mechanism, this which we've wanted. The bankers have always wanted this way of creating money ex nihilo, as it were. But if we do something so crass as to throw bales of money out of helicopters, they didn't have helicopters back then, throw bales out of hay wagons along the street, or deliver money like the milkman delivering milk, well, people will cotton on to what's going on, and you have rampant inflation. So you need to have some sort of mechanism that's subtle enough that people won't understand what's happening. So open market operations are whereby the central bank, the Federal Reserve in this case, purchases government debt on the market. In other words, debt that's already been issued and bought by somebody else. Someone wants to sell it. The Federal Reserve steps in and buys it, and they pay for it simply by creating new money. Okay, and they do this at regularly scheduled meetings when they conduct these operations. But the critical point here is that they do it in concert with a very small number of privileged financial institutions. In the United States, every one of those is in or is in the New York City area. Okay. And there's a number of them abroad in Europe and Japan and elsewhere overseas that do the same thing. And these are authorized dealers who are allowed to transact treasuries, both on behalf of the Treasury Department and on behalf of the Federal Reserve. And so the plangent point here is that these elite money-centered banks and commercial and investment banks that are given this authority to transact, they have first dibs on the new money. They're the ones who are going to receive the deposit when the Federal Reserve says, okay, we're going to pay you for X amount of treasuries that are being sold. The money goes to them. And so anyone who has an account with them, and those are mostly wealthy people, hedge fund managers, and people like this, they get first dibs on the new money. And it works out really well for them because it inflates the value of their assets. It's one of the reasons that the stock market is constantly, going up and up and up, in defiance of all logic, and the PE is good. The collective PE is getting greater and greater and greater with the passage of years. Is because the effects of inflation on assets are great if you own the assets, right? But for ordinary people like us, of course, that money starts at these, the money spigots are at these money center banks that operate directly with the Fed. But then eventually it percolates out into the rest of the economy and drives up consumer prices. And you have consumer inflation, which is not good for the rest of us who rely on savings and CDs and ordinary things like this. We see the prices of grocery go up and cars and fuel and everything else, right? But if you're a billionaire and you have an account at one of these banks, you're going to see your portfolio just surge every time there's a new round of quantitative easing or whatever it happens to be, right? So the thing is, inflation is beneficial to the few at the expense of the many. And it's the real reason that, the rich are getting richer and fewer in number, and the poor are getting, maybe not poorer, but people in the middle class are being ground down. I mean, we're still not Burkina Faso or something like that. But the fact is that 60, 70 years ago, a one-income family could afford a decent house, a car, pay off the mortgage by the time the couple was 40 years old or thereabouts, live the rest of their lives in debt, accumulate savings and this type of thing. Today, a two-income household is hard-pressed to do those things. Many ordinary two-income middle-class households never pay their house off, never pay their student loans, are forever making payments on cars. And you see that indebtedness is growing and growing and growing. And this is the long-term consequence of fiat money and inflationary currency, as far as ordinary people are concerned. But for the ultra rich, it's a great thing.
So there's a lot of skepticism on the part of many people about the Federal Reserve. I've always sort of been of the mindset that we need them, that they represent a healthy check and balance on an out-of-control Congress that is spending money like drunken sailors on Friday night with no regard to the long-term consequences of their recklessness, and that the Fed is at least able to maintain some stability and tame inflation, loosen and constrict credit based on employment and inflation and other monetary indicators. But I just don't know. The fact that it was created in secrecy, the fact that they operate independent of everyone, the only real check is that Trump thinks he can fire the head of the Federal Reserve. I'm not convinced that he can even fire him. Where do the checks and balances come into play? And are we being played on both sides against the middle here?
Well, I mean, I have to be careful here. I mean, bankers have a certain way of looking at their profession, what they do, and they tend to think of themselves as benefactors. And the more independence they have, the better they can discharge their duties. That's what they say. So there's this idea that's encouraged, and not just with regard to the Federal Reserve, by the way. This applies to the entire so-called fourth branch of government, all these regulatory agencies that are nominally nestled inside the executive branch, but we're told, they're independent. That this idea that it's somehow it's sullying and it's an impure thing if you are beholden to the messiness of politics. Now, the reality of the Federal Reserve with regard to Congress and debt is this. Far from providing a check on Congress, what the Federal Reserve does is it incentivizes reckless spending and debt. Because here's the nasty little secret of the Federal Reserve that almost no one understands. And that is, people will come out and say, well, the Federal Reserve creates money out of nothing. And technically that's not true. They create money out of debt. Okay, open market operations being exhibit A, right? In other words, if you don't have the government issuing debt, they have nothing to purchase to add to their portfolio for the which they can then, create fiat money in exchange. Okay, because they're not just creating dollars and saying, here's money. They're saying we're creating it in exchange for debt. The other way that they do it, by the way, is that they allow the commercial banking system to lower its interest rates or to lower their required reserve rates, and that in turn incentivizes them to loan out more money, and more people come in and borrow money. So in both cases, an increase in the money supply is always accompanied by an increase in debt, public and private, right? And so what does that mean? It means that all of our Congress critters know that they really don't have to worry about debt because we can always print our way out of it. And they also know that the monetary system itself cannot function without government debt. That's the ultimate dirty secret of fiat money is if our government paid off all of its debts, if there was no longer any out, like it did very briefly during Andrew Jackson's presidency, and has never done so since. If we return to that state of affairs of total national solvency, if we were in the blue, we would no longer have any money in circulation because there'd be no way for the Federal Reserve to inject liquidity, as the expression goes. There'd be no debt to offset that. And this was actually explained at least once, to our knowledge, to Congress, a rather incredulous congressional committee back in the 1930s by Mariner Eccles, the first truly powerful Fed chair. And he told the congressman, he said, if Americans got out of debt, if the whole country, the government, and people, if people basically paid off all their debts, the system we have now could not function. All the money would disappear back in the bank vaults, and it wouldn't be able to circulate. So the entire system depends upon debt.
That's a hard principle for me to get my mind around. I mean, yes, the debt would be extinguished, but you've still got commerce. You've got a $4 trillion a year economy.
Well, we'd have to have another mechanism for money if we said, in effect, we're going to actually start getting. It would actually be a problem even if we began seriously paying down the debt, because the whole cycle has become dependent on the idea that we not only have debt but more and more of it.
I'm playing devil's advocate with you, sure, but I have actually maintained the same theory. I want to come back to that in a second, but before we jump to that, the fact of the matter is that piece of paper that we use, that's currency, that we keep score with, and it shows up in our bank account, is valuable because it is backed by the full faith and credit of the United States of American government. So I don't really understand why getting rid of $37 trillion in debt would result in our economy imploding. And because your theory is that there would be no debt, there'd be no money. That does not really resonate with me, but I don't say that contentiously. Just educate me.
No. I'm not saying the economy would implode. I'm saying that if we decided at some point, and right now politically that looks very unlikely, but if we actually elected 435 Thomas Masseys to Congress or something like this, and suddenly the political will was there to actually cut government spending and to cut debt in a major way, which we could do. I mean, if we simply got rid of all the extra, the non-constitutional functions of the federal government, it would probably reduce, federal expenditures by 70% or more just by doing that, just by cutting expenses. But leaving that aside, it's not likely to happen anytime soon. But supposing that it were, in order to avoid, utter chaos and crashing the system, we would have to concomitantly change the monetary system, which is dependent on ever increasing supply of debt, because otherwise, again, you're going to quickly run out of debt with which to conduct open market operations. So then how do you create more money then?
Well, you have piqued my interest. I'm not there yet, but I am open to receiving more education and getting more knowledgeable on what you're espousing. It would seem to me, well, I'm conflicted on it, okay? Because I feel that, and I made the point many times on this program, anytime we get in a financial crisis, what's the first thing we do?
Well, we print more money.
Exactly. We print more money because, and we create more debt, and we call it
create more debt. I don't know.
Stimulus.
Oh, a stimulus. Right. Sure. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So when we get in trouble, the first knee-jerk reaction, 2008, what did we do? We just started printing money like it was going out of style. And we, to the government's credit, we saved our economy. I mean, um, was it the Treasury Secretary? I think it was the Treasury Secretary, or maybe the Federal Reserve Chairman. He literally lived in his office for a week and really didn't sleep trying to keep our government alive and our country financially viable. But the term is that we're stimulating the economy so that it can survive, so we can band-aid it over until we can get our financial house back in order. So I've asked many people, including a very knowledgeable guy from the Mises Institute. Their whole thrust is a think tank on monetary and fiscal policy in the U.S. economy. And I said, if you consider printing money stimulus, if you start paying back the debt, wouldn't that be the opposite of stimulus and therefore be a destimulus and perhaps actually cause us to enter into at least an economic slowdown, if not an all-out recession? So I get where you're coming from. The problem that I have is that our national debt at the level that it's at has now created a new line item on our federal budget called interest, which is now the single largest line item on our federal budget. It now exceeds the GDP of the United States, the debt does. And I had breakfast with the president of the Atlanta Federal Reserve, I think well, I can tell you it was in 2018, so 7 years ago. And he told me that the debt to GDP was 70%, and that when it got to 75 or 80%, it was considered the tipping point. And now I think we're at 115%.
At least 120, yeah, depending on whom you talk to. Yeah.
Or maybe 120. So, I mean, it's changing daily. And so it feels to me that we're headed for a financial doomsday scenario. Now, I think the argument against it is, in support of your point, I think President Trump is remaking our economy one brick at a time. And I think he's almost there. He's passed a big, beautiful bill providing tax cuts, more debt. He has declared tariffs on our friends and foes alike. That's creating $650 billion of newfound revenue coming in, flooding into our treasury. He is deregulating our government. He finally got Jerome Powell to cut interest rates, and I think we're due for another one or two. And he's gotten $15 trillion. Now that's real money, partner, of new investment in our country for manufacturing. That is going to extinguish the unemployment condition that we have at 4.3%, which I think is high. Some people say they think it's equivalent to full employment. I don't buy that because we had 3.2% under Trump 1.0. So I think we got a lot of room for improvement on unemployment. But my point is, we get those things done, then give us meaningful tax or budget relief and get this federal budget under control. And I know I'm going on a bit of a soapbox rant here. Can I give you one more thing that I'm looking at in the future that I think could be incredibly, I mean, like the most significant thing that's happened since 1964? I don't mean to monopolize our conversation, but I'm on a tear. The Supreme Court of the United States right now has a case on their docket to review the Voting Rights Act of 1964. The Voting Rights Act of 1964, I think, appropriately changed the balance of power in the United States and gave a voice to minorities who had been denied and discriminated against. Perfect policy, right time, right place, right decision. Roll the camera forward 60 years later. Those same minorities have had to vote. They've had a disproportionate say in our national policy. Like it or not, it's a fact. Look at New England, 40% Republican, 0 representatives in Congress. Look at California, 40% Republican, 17% Republican representation in Congress. And they have gotten free food, free housing, free education, just Obama phones. And I think the party's over. And I think we've had the tail wagging the dog too long. They don't, the minorities that I'm speaking about, you name them, principally African Americans, Hispanics to some extent, and maybe Asians, a smattering of Asians would be in that group. But the tail has wagged the dog. It has been really a policy of giving, of tension between the haves and the have-nots, and the haves have given and given and given and given. And now I think they are tired of giving because now blacks want reparations, and we're saying we've already paid. Number one. Number two, we didn't create slavery. We didn't enjoy any benefit from slavery. That happened over centuries ago, a century ago at least, although discrimination continued. And it is my prediction that the Supreme Court of the United States is going to reverse the Voting Rights Act of 1964, and we're going to restore a balance of power in the United States. And then we're not going to have a Congress of masses, but we're going to have more of them. And we can get some adults back in the room, and we can stop this absurd, destructive government spending.
Well, I think we'll know a lot more about this come next November, a year from November. You know, we'll see how the midterm elections go and what the general sentiment. I mean, it certainly looks to me, and a lot of people are saying, you know, this is just we're going through a period of change comparable to the post-war period, the Gilded Age, the early republic after the country became independent. It's kind of, that's what we're seeing right now, is a transition into an entirely new way, or perhaps, you know, in some ways, a restoration of the old cadences of the way things used to be done. I mean, I think just in general, where all government policy is concerned, whether you're talking about monetary policy we were discussing earlier and so forth, you always have to look at who is being incentivized to do what. And so often you see, as with the Voting Rights Act and so many other things that one could adduce, we see legislation being passed, agencies being created, where at least professedly the best of intentions are involved. You know, we want to equalize, level the playing field, or we want to end discrimination. We want to give the downtrodden more opportunity, and so forth and so on. I mean, you know, that was kind of the clarion call of the entire New Deal, for example, and many other things. And we don't stop to think of, first of all, what the long-term effects of these programs would be. We only think in terms of the short term and in terms of the specific groups perhaps being targeted, the interest groups or the minorities or what have you. We don't think about how it affects the generality in the long term. And by effects, I mean, we don't always think through what the incentives are. You know, so it may sound nice, for example, to say, well, let's be generous with the public monies and give them to people who are poor. You know, create welfare programs, what used to be called the dole, but that was a term that, you know, FDR got rid of because it sounded very pejorative in people's minds. But welfareism generally disincentivizes industry and thrift on a personal level. That's a fact. And so, you know, we now see, and the same as, you know, when we have new, immigrants coming into the country legally or illegally or whatever, we want to offer them more benefits. We want to be kind. Well, what does that do? Well, it incentivizes more illegal immigration, as we've seen in recent years. And so often, this is the problem with policymakers, is if they think in the short term, they think in terms of, you know, we want to be good people now. We want to do things, that'll benefit. Some of them may be more cynical. You know, they may think, well, I want to preserve my power base and all this sort of thing. But I think a lot of people, give them the benefit of the doubt, you know, in DC, including many liberals, are well-intentioned. Ultimately, they want to do the nice and decent thing, but they don't think about, you know, how's this going to play with human nature? It's what we know about human nature. And so, you know, And that kind of, circle back to what we were saying earlier. I mean, that's the problem with having a fiat currency, that somebody has the power to it. It inevitably incentivizes this kind of abuse, and it incentivizes more and more debt beyond what would be rational.
Well, I think you're a nice guy. I think you're a smart guy. I note that you did not touch any of those hot potatoes that I threw out at you, and I don't really blame you for that. I would just say two things. One is, I think that the die is going to be cast in January when the Supreme Court rules on the Voting Rights Act. We have already seen districts being redrawn in North Carolina where Republicans picked up one seat. Now the Democrats are really freaking out because they realize that Florida's on the verge of doing that, as are some other states. And I think that the Voting Rights Act, if it is shot down, it will return us truly to one man, one vote. And if you don't believe in white supremacy, which we're accused of all the time, then you don't need the Voting Rights Act. All you need is to stand on your own 2 feet. Every American should be entitled to do that. They should be able to vote. They should be able to vote liberal, conservative, Democrat, Republican, or even communist, as we're seeing going on in New York right now. But there should not be disproportionate weight on given a minority, I don't believe, in 2025. And I think that by the midterm elections, if the Voting Rights Act is struck down, I think you'll see states redistricting. Florida will try and get rid of the 17% Republicans that they have in Congress, and other states will try and get rid of Democrats.
Just for the record, I agree with you, and I hope that is what happens, because on the one hand, yes, racism is a terrible thing, discrimination is a terrible thing,
but for sure, no one's arguing.
We've ended up kind of in this system with affirmative action, all the rest of this, where you have a sort of weird, perverse, reverse racism going on.
Absolutely,
and that needs to end also.
And I'm so type A. I'd like everything right now. I'd like these decisions to be made faster, but that's just not the nature of life, really, nor certainly in terms of our government. But it does seem to be happening. The shift has happened much faster than I thought. I mean, can you believe we're sitting here in October, and Trump's only been president for now 9 full months, and DEI is literally gone. It is no longer part of our vernacular, except in the history books.
Yeah, and a few university campuses. Yeah, I mean, the changes are stunning. And if he lives out the 4 years of his second term, and I don't mean he's going to get assassinated, but he's not a young man either, So, I mean, assuming he finishes his second term in office, we could see some remarkable changes. Another thing I mentioned, the other great tectonic Supreme Court ruling that's coming up is the one on Humphrey's executor. I don't know if you've been following that one as well, but that's a 90-year-old precedent, and that's the ruling that way back in 1935 that effectively laid the foundation for what we now call, the fourth branch of government, the regulatory state. It said it was a decision that said, in effect, no, the president doesn't necessarily have the power to dismiss or fire people within the executive branch in certain offices, and that created the precedent for what we now have. This, and again, that was all set forth as being, the intentions were good. Supposedly, we don't want these agencies to be politicized, to be contaminated by what goes on in Capitol Hill. We want them to be independent. But that also means they're not accountable, as we're discovering now. There's zero accountability to the electorate, and so Absolutely. We've had 90 years now of this massive cancerous growth of this unelected and unconstitutional fourth branch of government that has judicial power, legislative power, all this sort of thing. Spends money without the say-so of the voters. And if the Supreme Court rules as everyone is expecting them to, and overturns Humphrey's executor, that could be the death knell to these unaccountable agencies as well. That will also be a very significant change.
Well, I made a podcast, and we did a radio segment a couple of weeks ago. It is our best performing segment we've ever done, called "Donald Trump is Deconstructing the Deep State." And I truly do believe that that's what this administration is doing. I think chapter 1 was Russia, 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 where Tulsi Gabbard gave us proof positive that Comey and Obama and Clinton, Clapper and Brennan, they lied. They conspired to conduct a coup against the democratically elected president of the United States. They first tried to defeat him at the polls. That didn't work. So then they tried to oust him. And they did it based on a flagrant, blatant, now known lie. And so I think that's chapter one. I think the 2020 election may well be chapter two of that book. I've served on a team in a lawsuit against the Fulton Board of Elections. I've said it many times. I've seen the evidence. I've cross-examined our forensic accountants. I've cross-examined. I played devil's advocate with them. I've spoken to 4 independent witnesses, each who testified under oath that they saw 20,000 pristine ballots in the State Farm Tabulating Center, all filled out identically by a printer, not untouched by a human hand, waiting to be counted. So the evidence of a steal in Georgia is overwhelming. I cannot comment with authority on the other swing states, but my suspicions would be that if we looked, we would see very similar things. But this is fact. This is real evidence that exists. I think chapter 3, I hope, will be who took a shot at our president in Butler, Pennsylvania on July 13th and exposed them. I'd also like in that chapter a subpart to be who killed Charlie Kirk. I don't think we have the answers. And then what else? Oh yeah. Who took down Building 7? I think we have a right to know. So I would just say to Kash Patel, Dan Bongino, live up to your promises, give us transparency, give us truth. And then if the Humphreys Executor Act is struck down, then we could get meaningful reform. I hope that in the process, we can get rid of collective bargaining in our government. I don't think teachers and postal workers should have the benefit of collective bargaining. If you don't like the wage and you don't like the conditions, go find another job. I'm sorry, that's my state of mind.
Well, there are limits to what one man can accomplish, even one man with the will to succeed. Donald Trump, which, part of what's driving Donald Trump is payback. I got to say that after the way they treated him for the better part of 8-10 years, he wants some payback, and I don't blame him one bit. But he's being quite ruthless about it. But these people have it coming to them, and frankly, nothing less than that level of will is going to ever see any of those people do the perp walk. I'll be surprised if any of them actually do jail time or end up being penalized because the judiciary is still very much tilted in favor of the establishment and particularly in the DC area. So it's unlikely that Comey will ever see the inside of a jail cell or Brennan or any of the rest of them. But
Comey is in Virginia, not much better than DC, but a fighting chance. The judge has made at least one ruling that I think was favorable to the prosecution. But I really don't like when people come on here and just we all agree on everything. The nature of a civilized discourse allows us to really get to the truth. So when I disagree with you or challenge you, it's not because I'm trying to be provocative or be mean, but I do challenge you on a couple of things. I understand that perception that he is being politically vindictive is hard to deny entirely, but there's a difference here, a significant difference. The 90 some odd charges that Trump was indicted on in 4 lawsuits were basically false.
Oh, right.
Take Letitia James. Trump lied on his personal financial statement. Well, my first job was in a bank. I took people's loan applications. We never made a loan decision on someone's financial statement. Instead, what it was, it told us where to look. So if they've got a house and they say that it's worth $1 million, we know to go look at their house. If they say they've got a credit card balance of $5,000, we know to go look. And we find out it's 10, or maybe they made a mistake and it's really only 2. But it's a roadmap on where to look to make the onus is on the banker. In Letitia James's case, there was no victim, There was no complainant. Instead, what there was a candidate who ran for Attorney General of the state of New York on really the singular platform that she was going to get Donald Trump.
Oh, no, it's absolutely true. And the thing is, don't mistake the point that I'm making is that Trump is angry, and that's a good thing, because the problem,
good motivation
with so many people on our side is that we want to be nice guys. And even Trump, that was one of his big mistakes when his first term in office. Remember he was on the hustings. What did he say? I'm going to put Hillary Clinton in jail for what she did. And then once he became president, let's conciliate here. Let's be nice.
Right.
Now that I've won, that turned out to be a big mistake, because of course Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, and company had no intention of conciliating. The Obamas set up shop in D.C. and began directing operations against Trump, and we know what the result is. So this time around, Trump is angry. And in my opinion, he's justifiably angry. He's saying, okay, if that's how we're going to do things, here's what we're going to do. We're no more Mr. Nice Guy. We're not going to gloze over any of this stuff anymore in the name of can't we all just get along? You guys obviously don't want to just get along, so we're going to bring the full brunt of the law down on you. I don't see a problem with that. And I think paradoxically, that's the level of resolve that's going to be needed to affect real change. And I would add,
100%.
You mentioned the assassination of Charlie Kirk. I think that's going to be remembered as an event that helped us, kind of the rank and file people. I know when I watched that whole thing, I just felt this slow burn inside of me and thought, oh my goodness, And so not that people on our side are saying, okay, we're going to start going out and shooting them. That's not it. They're just saying,
that's
okay,
not the answer.
We're not going to let them push us around anymore. We're not going to pretend to be nice and kumbaya and all this sort of thing. We're at the point now where we have to stand resolutely on principle and put up with the brickbats and respond in kind. If they insult and lie, say, point it out and say this is, and nothing less than that will suffice, because this kind of deep state has been entrenched for so long, and the lies have become so pervasive that nothing less than that degree of pushback is going to work.
That is the point. It's the lies. And, I'm not happy that, and we just had an interview with a great guy that has produced a movie on the Iraq War. His name is Michael Pack. I think it'll probably be on either next week or the week after in commencement of Veterans Day. But the Iraq War was perpetrated on a lie. There were no weapons of mass destruction. And I think that Bush and Cheney and Colin Powell knew it. And if they didn't know it, then it was the fault of the CIA that may have given them disinformation in order to get us into that skirmish. It seems to me like everything, and I know this sounds crazy and I'm a conspiratorialist, but I'm just taking the hand that I've been dealt and the facts that I've looked at. Everything that's bad that's happened in this country seems to track straight back to the CIA and the intelligence community of the United States. And we have given them a pass for so long, starting with the assassination of John Fitzgerald Kennedy, that they think that they can act with impunity. I think that day is over. And I think that we're going to see an atonement. So when you say that you don't think that anybody's going to have to serve in jail, I understand why you would conclude that, because they never have. They never do. But Comey is so disliked, and he has been so demonic, and he has been so belligerent and vile in the way that he has gone after the 45th and 47th president of the United States. I think he'll be the first to go. And I think John Brennan has legitimately committed treason against this country. He was the station chief in Saudi Arabia with the CIA, and he signed the visas for, I think, 70 or 80% of the terrorists that took down the World Trade Center. At least so we're told they did. I'm not even convinced of that anymore. Somebody said, well, jets really didn't hit the World Trade Center. I don't buy that. I saw it on national TV in real time, but I'm not sure that the jets caused the buildings to topple. I am open to receiving information on that, only because I've seen Building 7 that collapsed 6 hours later, 7 hours later, and not a single architect or engineer that's looked at it believes that it was from debris that came from the Twin Towers, which is what we've been told. It was a controlled demolition, and God only knows what was inside of that building and what somebody was trying to hide. Well, I'm sorry, Steve, you just fired me up, and I should have had another cup of coffee so I could really get going. But I appreciate your indulgence, and I really appreciate your coming on, and I thank you for your time and your insights today.
Well, thanks, John. It's been a great discussion.
Well, you're the third person I think that we've had on from the John Birch Society, and I began my last interview with who was it? Anthony? Was it the General Counsel? I think. Joe Wolverton, just a really great guy. And I said, I was a little reluctant to have representatives from the John Birch Society on because the organization has somewhat of a tainted image that was created historically, but that's kind of like punishing the children for the sins of the father, in my view. Today, I think it's a much different organization, and your mission statement is to provide nonpartisan civics and education. What's the matter with that? I love it. Thank you for coming on, Steve, and I hope I haven't been too severe on you.
No, I appreciate it. I as an academic myself, I'm used to give and take, and I think that's very important.
Well, I think we violently agree on 90% of what we've talked about, but how we get there may be slightly different. So thank you very much, and have a good rest of your weekend. You're welcome back anytime.
Likewise. Thanks. Take care.
I've never seen anything like it. Donald Trump landed in Qatar on October the 25th. On the 26th and 27th, he was in Malaysia. Yesterday, or I should say Wednesday and Thursday, he was in Japan. And Friday and Saturday, that would be today, he is in South Korea, making news, world news at every stop. And it's just like nothing I've ever seen from a president of the United States.
Tremendous energy.
And that's straight from Richard Lyons. And he is an author of The DNA of Democracy in the Shadows of the Acropolis. Richard, welcome to The Truth.
Thank you, John. Great to be with you.
Have you ever seen anything like this in your entire life? A U.S. president globe trotting to bring peace and trade stability to the world? I mean, I am beyond myself in terms of excitement, inspiration, enthused with patriotism. And just, I mean, I want to make a bigger imprint on the world. This guy is doing it 18 hours a day.
Yeah, and his inner circle calls him the machine. But where, John, in previous administrations, you would see a president go and there would be all this ceremony, and in the end, nothing would be done, right? It would just be, oh, yeah, we're friends, it's okay, sort of thing. In this one, you're right. He stopped in Qatar, met with the emir, and this in the backdrop of Israel having to fight Hamas to disarm them now because they're breaking the peace agreement they just signed. And I think he went there to get Qatar to say, it's okay if Israel has to ramp it up to get Hamas to come to the agreement and agree to what they agreed to. It's okay with Qatar.
Yeah.
And then he goes to Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia and secures a peace deal between Cambodia and Thailand.
All right, so let's stay grounded in Qatar just for another couple of minutes. Mayan, tell us, what does that emir mean? Who is the emir? Well,
it equates to a king in the Western thoughts of what a king is. He is the head of state.
Yes,
and
now
he has that power.
That ain't like King Charles. He just parades
no, not like
in fancy duds and goes to those elaborate cocktail parties. But this emir, he wields real power, doesn't he? He is like he's King Charles and Donald Trump all put together in one package, right?
That's very well put.
Yeah. So why was it important for Trump on his way to Malaysia? I don't even know whether Qatar is on the way. I mean, I guess it depends on whether you want to fly
It
east or
depends
fly
on which
west.
side of the world you go.
Yeah.
You know?
But is Malaysia, would you fly east to get to Malaysia?
Yeah, normally that would be the route you would take.
But it just seems curious to me that he would make such an effort to stop in Qatar. Why
Well,
do you feel like
I think there's
that was so
more
important?
to this than meets the eye. That old saying.
Yeah, me too.
And I think it is too coincidental that Hamas is continuously breaking the peace agreement they just signed and killing fellow Palestinians who are conceived to be disloyal. So they're breaking the agreement, they're killing their own people, and Israel is saying enough. They've already killed 4 Israeli soldiers in this. And so Israel has to ramp up a response which aims at disarming Hamas. I think Trump is in Qatar to say, look, this has to happen. Do you mind? Can you stand by?
Or maybe he was lobbying the emir to intervene and work with Hamas, because I don't understand why do Qatar, what do Qatar and Hamas have in common? Why are they perceived to be in alignment?
Qatar has been a critical link between Iran and Hamas and Hezbollah for years. They've been, and I think Qatar, a lot of Hamas's leadership has been in Qatar while the war has been going on with Israel as kind of a safe haven. And I think, it might be that, Trump is saying to Qatar, look, if you don't convince Hamas to disarm right now, we're going to convince them, and it's going to be a very bloody thing, and you're going to have to stand aside. I think that might be the key to what's going on.
Wow. I mean, is this not like a Rubik's Cube that you got to try and put together?
John, in our lifetimes, can you take a time and say the Middle East is not a Rubik's Cube?
No, you really
Rubik's
can't. But you invoke the name of Hezbollah, which frankly I have not heard from or about in years, and they're in Lebanon, right?
They are. So Hamas is in the south and Hezbollah is in the north, and they have both been proxies of Iran. And so this is the Iran terror circle around Israel. There are 40 different terrorist groups that surround Israel on all their borders. Hezbollah and Hamas being the mains. And Iran has been funding them. And you can trace this back to Obama sending money to Iran. You can trace it back to Biden unfreezing assets. But those things have been going directly to Hezbollah and Hamas. Now, what happened over the past year is that Israel defeated both Hezbollah and Hamas. Trump went in and took out Iran's nuclear capability. And so this has fundamentally changed the whole Middle East. And he's now pressuring Qatar, I think, in this visit to say, you either get them to disarm, that is Hamas, or you have to stand aside.
Are you resolute in your view of Israel versus Hamas?
Yes, absolutely so. Hamas exists for no other reason than to destroy Israel. So Hamas, since they took power in over the Palestinian population in Gaza, has been using all the money that goes to Gazans and all the aid to arm up and make war.
So I have my views almost morph, and they seem to be fluid. And I'm like, I take pride in being one of the most decisive people that I know. I mean, I will wait a long time to make a decision until I collect all the data and get a firm conviction one way or the other. And then I listen to my head, I listen to my gut, I make a decision, and I'm usually right. I am so freaking confused on the Israel and Hamas. And I don't know why I say Hamas. It's really Palestine. But Hamas, I guess, is the governing body of Palestine. I find it incredibly difficult to believe that the Palestinian people would sanction Hamas to be its leaders. I question whether they just stole power or whether they were given it. But
it goes back to around the year 2000 when Israel gave Gaza back to the Palestinians. The moment that happened, Hamas seized the opportunity to infiltrate Gaza and become the de facto leadership on the way to having elections where they were or were not legitimately elected. It depends on your point of view.
Well, it's not a point of view, it's a factual determination. I mean, either they did or they didn't, but then you have to ask, was the election legit? Just like you have to ask whether Biden was the legitimate president of the United States. I happen to have seen a lot of facts in Georgia that lead me to the inescapable conclusion that Georgia was stolen. I think if it's fair to ask, if Georgia was stolen, does that mean that Arizona, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and other swing states were stolen as well? But that's a subject for another day. But let's get back to, so here's where I'm coming from, Richard, and I am legitimately seeking knowledge on this point. But about 2 weeks ago, or maybe even a month ago, there seemed to be a shift of public opinion away from Israel in favor of the Palestinians, because we were told repeatedly and unrelentingly that Israel was committing genocide against the Palestinians. I bought the narrative, and I also learned that Israel had 2,000 Palestinian or Hamas hostages. We had never heard that before, but all of a sudden, bam, this revelation comes out. And then that led me to ask further, well, how did Israel treat its political prisoners, which is what they called them, while we call Hamas's prisoners hostages? There seems to be an inconsistency there. And so I listen to these words and I try and piece them together and read between the lines. And what I concluded at that time was there are no white hats in this conflict, that they're equally bad. And I made that comment, I think they were Jewish, on a broadcast I was invited to come on this week. And they really did hit me in the gut when I said that. And they went through all the facts in the timeline. And then I walked away and I said, I think I was sold a bill of goods.
Well, here's a couple of things.
The reality is that Hamas went in and killed hundreds of people on October the 7th at that pop festival, and they have been savage, which was my perception. But then you had people like Charlie Kirk and Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens and Megyn Kelly that were sort of leading us off that path. These are people I like and respect. Sort it out for us.
All right. First of all, it was over 1,200 people were butchered. On October 7th. And then hundreds taken prisoner, right? Underneath the ground in a literal hellhole, where many of them died there. Then you had Israel going through Gaza to get the hostages back. And one of the best experts, and I can't remember his name, I wish I could, he's from West Point. And his speciality is urban warfare. And he said the way the Israelis have been, and the IDF have been carrying out this operation, is the gold standard for not killing civilians, for finding your target and taking them out. And now we're at this point, John, where to get how many? Just dozens of hostages back, and many of them dead bodies. The Israelis are releasing 2,000 prisoners of war that are Hamas, and most of them are terrorists. So you see the disproportion here. Hamas is killing people wholesale. Israel's losing soldiers to save Palestinians.
Well, Richard, your explanation of why President Trump stopped in Qatar certainly resonates with me, and that makes a lot of sense. And I guess the proof will be in the pudding. We should know soon enough whether we're going to get real peace. Now, I know this is kind of ludicrous, but, it seemed to me that when Trump, in Trump 1.0, dropped that big bomb into the mountain in Afghanistan, it turned a lot of heads and got some attention. Is that not a possibility in this skirmish? I mean, could we just really get this over with in a hurry? If we dropped one of those big, beautiful bombs right in the middle of Grand Central for those tunnels in Pakistan and Gaza, and just
Well, I think
like shut
John,
them down.
He already did it in Iran.
Yes, he did indeed. Yeah.
To the surprise, I think, of everybody in the world. And that sent a clear message. That's when it really turned over. And when and our relationship with Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Jordan, all these countries are more afraid of Iran than they are of Israel. And so
Yeah, for sure.
when he literally, instead of Biden and Obama, who were literally paying Iran to build their nuclear capability, when Trump punched him right in the face and took out that capability, I think the whole world noted it. And it's when the tide turned toward peace. And so I think now you have Qatar, and they are something like the Switzerland of the Middle East. You know, they're diplomatic. They're in between everything. And I think Trump went there purposefully to say, look, if Israel has to do this thing and Hamas will not put down its weapons and let us take the weapons, we're going to have to go take them ourselves or let Israel do it.
Yeah.
And we need you to step aside and just let it happen. Otherwise, it's another bloodbath.
So what inference do you draw from the fact that Obama gave Iran billions of dollars, and then that frickin' Joe Biden, the illegitimate 46th president of the United States, gave him more money? I mean, where is their mind? What is their motive?
Well, what began with Obama, which was a first time, was that he sided with Iran. He sided with the terrorist country.
Yeah, he went there and apologized.
He wanted Iran to exercise hegemony in the Middle East, contrary to Saudi Arabia, contrary to Israel or Egypt. He went with a Shia majority country that's radicalized. And that was surprising. He stuck to it with the JPCOA, if you remember, John. That was money in return for slowing down the nuclear program. What it actually did was subsidizing.
It's just mind-boggling that somebody could be that irresponsible. And really, I mean, it's anti-American is what it is. So Trump left Qatar and went to Malaysia, where he worked on peace between Cambodia and Thailand.
Right.
What was the result? Did they sign a treaty of sorts, or what is the outcome?
In the general, they're calling it the Kuala Lumpur, and that's a city in Malaysia, the Kuala Lumpur Peace Accord. And this, again, was a war between two countries that, you know, it's kind of like Israel and Gaza. And what Trump does, and what's really wonderful about what he's doing, is he creates peace through commerce.
Yes.
Right? It's kind of like the Pax Britannica.
Yeah.
If you go back that far. He is creating peace among different nations in order to be common commercial partners with the United States. So he's making these pacts between Cambodia, Vietnam, Thailand, etc., and they are agreeing to put down their arms in favor of peace and prosperity. If you can imagine that, I think
it seems to be working pretty darn good. He claims solving 8 of 9 wars with only one remaining. I wonder how much it's going to cost to resolve that one, or what the incentives will be. So
it's better than paying for war.
Yeah, for sure.
Paying for peace.
Then he hopped on over to Japan, where he met with the new lady prime minister of Japan.
Yeah.
And they seem to have an extraordinarily good rapport with one another.
I'm very excited about her because she's called the Iron Lady of Japan, the Margaret Thatcher of Japan, which would, if the Japanese economy is so indebted that they are in a kind of a malaise, and they are suffering the same thing that other countries suffer from, which is, you know, too many benefits to persons who don't produce in their countries. And so if she is like a Margaret Thatcher, she will privatize everything and get the economy moving again.
Be interesting to know how her relationship is with Susie Wiles, who they call the Ice Lady in the White House because she's got ice water running through her veins. So then he hops on over to South Korea for a 2-day summit there. and he's just making trade deals left and right. And this all seems to be kind of the warm-up act for meeting Xi Jinping and doing a deal with China.
Well, this is if you take his trip, every stop he's made and every agreement he's made is a ring around China. And he's exacting from the countries around China that they will not accept transshipments from China of Chinese goods to ship to America, which they've been doing to escape tariffs. So that's number one. The second, the critical minerals agreements with all. And then third, which is the coup de grace, John. There is an agreement now with South Korea that they will invest $300 billion, $350 billion in shipbuilding in America. Now, why is that important? It's because China's Navy is producing so many ships a year. We are now going to get help from South Korea to rebuild our own Navy, to counter China, and this from a neighbor of China. So if you look at the rare minerals he's getting and the shipbuilding, the investment from Japan, which was another $350 billion, Toyota itself is going to invest $10 billion building factories with American workers in America. So this is all, it's a remarkable presidency through 9 months.
I couldn't agree more. And it's just absolutely undeniable that he's like the Energizer Bunny. I mean, I went on a trip to Europe. I flew from London back to West Palm Beach, and it took me 2 or 3 days to recover from jet lag. He's gone on 1, 2, 3, 4 trips, and presumably a fifth in a week. And
I think he travels so much he can't have jet lag.
I think the bet he's got on the Air Force One beat my business class seat a little bit, so he may have slept better than I did. But he's just we are so fortunate to have a president that's willing to tackle these tough issues, and all for the betterment of our country.
And in the last 9 months, it's gone from night, literally the Biden night, to daytime in America.
The Biden nightmare. I think you left off the word.
Nightmare. That's better put. Yeah.
So what happens with China now? What do you see?
Well, they are in a box because we are getting everything we need from their surrounding countries of all the gadgets and plastic that they have been making and selling in our market and sometimes dumping in our market. And we're going to get the rare earth minerals from Japan or from Malaysia or elsewhere or Australia. He just signed that deal.
And don't forget the Ukraine. We got a mineral deal with them.
Mineral deal with Ukraine. And so he's going to go into China and he's going to want, I think, first and foremost, stopping fentanyl production.
Yes.
Period. And I don't know if a lot of your listeners know, but there are literally 2,000 Chinese nationals on the northern border of Mexico making these fentanyl pills and getting them into America. And if it's with Chinese Concord, that has to stop first. Second, he's going to the mineral elements deal. He's going to want the barriers to come down. He's going to want them to take their barriers down to American trade. And all of these things are good things, and it puts China in their place.
Two things occur to me as you described 2,000 people making fentanyl on the Mexican northern border.
Yeah.
That feels like an act of war to me. They're sending lethal drugs into this country. I'm told that we already have enough fentanyl in the U.S. to kill every living American. I mean,
yes, that's true. That's true.
Is that not so? Am I exaggerating the significance of the Chinese doing that?
You are precisely right. And so they had a convocation at the White House just a couple of days ago. It seems like, Trump's doing all these other things. Mm-hmm. They had a convocation, and Mike Hegseth was put on the phone, our Secretary of War. And he said, thank God for the last 2 decades, our armies have been fighting battles on foreign battlefields for the sake of other nations. We meaning the whole administration, is treating this fentanyl business and the narco states of South America and China, and they're treating it as a war. He said they're going to bring everything they brought to bear against ISIS or the Taliban, all that ability, they're going to devote to the war against these drug cartels inside America and outside America. So I thought that was very heartening.
So the other question I have is, why in the hell are we allowing, or why is the Mexican government allowing this to happen on their soil? And aren't they running a pretty big risk of alienating their best trading partner?
Well, we might be their best trading partner, but inside Mexico, the cartels have a power that's equivalent to the power of the mafia in Sicily. And so, as the mafia in Sicily will take out judges and take out police captains and take out anybody who informs on them, I think Mexico has that identical problem.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Richard, for coming on today. The author of DNA of Democracy and Shadows of the Acropolis. And you have just given us a brilliant insight into so many world problems that we're dealing with today. And it is truly an honor to have had you on.
Oh, thank you, John. It's a big world. Thank heaven Trump's a part of it.
Well, how do you keep up with this stuff? I mean, I'm just amazed at your level of knowledge and insight.
It's just I know how to source things.
Yes,
is a good way to put it. And your flag behind you, it looks beautiful, and right in the middle it says the truth.
Yes,
and it depends on where you go to find the truth.
100%. No, that is a very insightful comment and truism in itself. So you've got these two books. How long have they been out, and how are they doing? Where do our readers or listeners find them, and where can we follow you?
Okay, well, it's a 3-volume series to date. There's a 4th that's going to come along. The first volume, John, is the DNA of democracy and America. I take all the instances of democracies and republics that informed our Constitution, and I make those dramatic tales and how they are woven into the fabric of who we are. I then extend from the Constitutional Convention and the Revolution to the Civil War, when so much sacrifice, over 1 million casualties occurred, in order to correct our Constitution, to add the element from the Declaration of Independence that all men and women are created equally, right? In volume 2, and it's this one, it's called Shadows of the Acropolis, and it talks about the growth of socialism in our government over the past 100 years, beginning with Woodrow Wilson. And at the end of this book, you find what socialism is and has been for the last 10 years as it attacks Trump. And it is a detailing of how socialism just illegalizes its political opponents, puts them in a target, and tries to put them in jail. And it's exactly what they've been doing to Trump.
I totally agree. And, his detractors say, oh, he's just engaged in retribution. And I call foul on that. The difference is Trump was accused of listing Mar-a-Lago for an inflated price. This Judge Ignoramus, who was a drum teacher who turned judge, he needs to go back to teaching the drums. I hope he's better at that than dispensing justice. Declared that Mar-a-Lago was worth $18 million. Well, we did a tour of Palm Beach a year or so ago, and we showed our viewers and listeners every house in Palm Beach that was worth $18 million. Let me tell you, there's a vast difference between those and Mar-a-Lago. Letitia James, however, I don't know what defense she's going to have for claiming 2 homesteads in 2 different states. She must
primary residences.
Yeah, she must be able to live in 2 places at the same time. I don't think that dog hunts, as we say down there here in Georgia. But listen, Thanks for coming on today, and it's been a pleasure.
Great to see you, John.
Thank you. Look forward to a next opportunity.
Okay. Bye-bye.